Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man at your services. How are you all? We're doing very, very well. And welcome to the last in a trio of great big videos on these classic retro vintage horror movies from Universal. From the unique box set by Eureka, which I just put out, called 3 Monster Tales of Sci-Fi Terror. And wow, in 3 videos I've actually got that title right for the first time. My God, it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does it? But anyway, and this particular box set has focused on sort of a theme of lesser known and neglected Universal gems. One from 1941, which is going to be this one, folks, and then the 2 I've already covered, which are from the late 50s. The Monolith Monsters from 1957, covered it, and Monster on the Campus from 1958, covered that. Now they are 2 separate entities. This film is from 1941, and it's on that borderline between the first wave of Universal horrors from the 30s and what would be the second wave of Universal horrors from the 1940s, which were not as good. But this is actually a great film and a very, very much neglected and overlooked gem. Absolute treasure this movie is. Man-Made Monster from 1941, starring Lon Chaney Jr. or Creighton Chaney as he would prefer to be known. But the suits had other ideas. Following in the illustrious footsteps of his father, Lon Chaney Sr. Look, I've got the name. That is Lon Chaney Sr. That's the Phantom of the Opera. And there's his son, his hairy son, Lon Creighton. The 2 of them together. Lon Chaney had been in many, many movies before this, playing bit parts and walk-ons, a lot of westerns, a lot of dramas. This was his horror debut really, his breakthrough horror movie, and it would prove massively influential and a huge landmark for him, because without this movie, you would not get The Wolfman. In this movie, Man-Made Monster from 1941, he's paired with director George Waggner. Now, both of these would secure Universal contracts because of the weight and the class and the appraisal of this movie, and they would go on the same year, 1941, to make The Wolfman. And the rest, of course, is history. Lon Chaney would become synonymous with the Titans of Terror. He'd go on to play the son of Dracula. He'd go on to play Frankenstein's monster. He'd play the Mummy. He was a monster again. And he'd be horribly typecast as the withdrawn, lovable, lunk-headed buffoon who just wants to help everyone, and yet fate has other ideas and will pull the rug from under him, and he'll become monsterized, and it'll be a very tragic story, totally exemplified by The Wolfman and by this. The template for The Wolfman is set out here. So let's get on to this now. And I love this film, and it runs for an hour. In fact, it's about 59 minutes. 59 minutes of B-movie class, which actually Universal wanted to be an A movie, but they wanted it done on the quick and on the cheap. But it comes across so powerfully and so wonderfully well done that it should be a genuine A-list movie. Anyway, Man-Made Monster. We'll come on to that title. There's controversy over this title as well. There's a lot of controversy with this movie, full stop. The idea for this was originally The Electric Man and was written by a team of newspapermen several years before, but Universal deemed it as too close in style and narrative to their earlier film, The Invisible Ray, with Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff. So they shelved it for a while. And then another writer came on board, Joseph West. There you go, little note teaser down here. And he dusted it down, looked at it again, reappraised it, retitled it, rejigged some stuff around, and it became Man-Made Monster. Now, in the script and in a lot of the advertising, man-made is a hyphenated word. Man, hyphen, made, monster. But in the movie itself, when the wonderfully elaborate title cards come up, and they come up and they fold down in front of you, and then the cast comes up and fold down, and it's great. It's great with a proper scenic background as well. Looks really good. And but in that, the hyphen is gone. So controversy and people's opinions seem to be, and it does make a difference if you think about it. Man-made hyphenated means like a man-made iceberg, Man created it. It's man-made. So man-made monster. It's a man made this monster. Or without the hyphen, it's like God created woman. Man made monster. It changes the emphasis a little bit. So what do they really mean by this? I personally think it should be the hyphenated version, and it's basically a monster's been created by a man. But you've had that before with Frankenstein, of course. And this film does emulate a lot of that. So, what is this film then, Kilt-Man? What are you talking about? Man-made monster? Lon Chaney? What's happening? Okay, Lon Chaney plays Dan McCormick. Dan the Electrical Man. And he's a worker. He has an act in carnival sideshows, travelling up and down the country. And he's great. He's a wizard with electrics and sparks and things. Makes sparks leap from his fingers. He can touch gyroscopes and his hair goes up and all that kind of stuff. You don't see that, which is a kind of a mistake of the movie, really. But again, we'll come on to a lot of all this. But he's plying his trade. And at the start of the film, you have this great action sequence featuring miniatures on like this rain-lashed, storm-tossed Californian high country road, with a cliff edge to it. And this speeding bus hits the rain-slicked tarmac and skids and overturns and plows into electric pylons. And everybody on board is killed except for one person. You guessed it, yeah? Dan, the Electrical Man. Because he's built up an immunity with his act. So he survives and he becomes not infamous or notorious. That comes later. He just becomes a celebrity. He's in hospital and he's totally fine. I'm all right. And what's all the fuss about, Doc? Look at this breakfast I've got here. And he's made up with himself, but because of his survival and the fame of this, how did one man survive when everyone else died? He comes to the attention of a couple of doctors, a couple of scientists. Dr. Lawrence. Lon would go on to play Lawrence Talbot in The Wolfman. So Lawrence suddenly looms a bit there. Comes in to see him. I'm very interested in you. I do a lot of scientific research into, electrophysiology. That's a thing, apparently. And I'd like you, when you come out, when the doctors release you, come to my big house. Here's my card. And, I'll have a little talk with you and have a little look at you. Make sure everything's okay. Because I find you fascinating. And he is an altruistic scientist. But he also works with another scientist called Dr. Paul Regas, which is a great name. And he's played by the great Lionel Atwill, who had done so many mad professor sort of roles in the past. And this, he's probably at his zenith. He's at his worst, most debauched and horrific in this movie. And he's done a lot of things like that in the past. We all know him from Ghost of Frankenstein, and he's also the inspector in Son of Frankenstein, and he's wonderful, a wonderful character actor. But he's the bad guy of the piece. So anyway, Dan McCormick gets, sent out from hospital, but he's got no act at the moment. The carnival's left town. Oh, what am I going to do? So, unemployment check, $28 a week or something like that. He rocks up at this palatial mansion of the two doctors. And you have Dr. Lawrence's niece lives there as well, June. And she is played by Anne Nagel. Oh, by the way, Samuel Hines plays Dr. Lawrence, the loving, caring, sharing professor. So Dan turns up there, and great to see you. We'll do some tests. Well, what kind of test does that mean, Doc? We'll just take some blood samples from you each day, and we'll test your reflexes. And we're just going to try and work out how you're able to withstand electrical currents through your body and all this. Because, it's interesting. But now, and you can stay here. If I'm staying here, does that mean I get fed as well? Yes, you get fed, Dan. We'll look after you. And they've got a lovely little family dog called Corky. I just said that, and my dog just started shaking in the hall there, doing one of them big husky shuffles. And this dog takes a real shine to Dan. And they say, oh, that's unusual, because normally he's not good with strangers. And this plays into a lot of the whole mythos around Lon Chaney. Lon Chaney he loved dogs. And on the set of Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and in fact the Wolfman as well, he met the universal German Shepherd dog that lives on the set and all that. Everyone knew it and loved it, called Moose, and they became firm friends, and lots of footage exists and publicity stills of Lon between takes playing with this dog, even in full Wolfman makeup, and the two got on great. My dog has just entered the room now, almost on cue. You might see it a bit of, yeah, there you go, it's just shuffled past. And indeed it wants to go out. Forgive me 1 second. Go on then. Oh, talk amongst yourselves. Aye, bloody dogs, gotta make an entrance, haven't they? You know? And this dog takes a shine. Corky, and apparently Corky is playing himself. He is Corky. Believe you me, I checked to see what his name was, because he plays such a big role in the movie. And Lon's getting on well, sorry, Dan's getting on so well with Corky, and he's teaching Corky to do some tricks. And they roll over, now roll the other side, now hold, the dog's on its back like that. And they're all like, wow, this is really good. But in the background, you've got, yeah, Dr. Paul Regas, Lionel Atwill. He has other ideas. Now, these two doctors both want to learn about electricity, the power, how can we harness it, what can we do with it? And they have an elaborate laboratory with all this, you know, scopes and oscillators and meters and gauges and lights and things. The lights are blinking and flashing everywhere. And it's driving me insane. And lots of a big operating table with straps on it, yeah, from Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory. And all this equipment, by the way, is from Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory, because it's made by Kenneth Strickfaden, who created all this fantastic equipment, capturing lightning bolts from the James Whale movies. And a lot of his stuff is props that see further life in other movies. Although there is one amazing contraption in this, which is like almost like a crane hoist, but it looks like something like the old Flash Gordon serial, you know, Buster Crab. And it's huge, and it just, they sort of wheel it out and it swings across, and it's bulbous and got a big, yeah, that sounds rude, I know, but it is kind of organically round and curved, and it does have a, that was not made by Kenneth Strickfaden. That was made by Hoover. So they have this thing as well, which I've not seen in any of the movie. Someone's going to say, oh, that's in the Invisible Ray, or it's in this, it's in that. And it could well be, but I don't recognise it. So, and it looks too memorable to not have been in something else. Anyway, so he has all this stuff there, but there's a cross purposes with these two professors. Whereas Dr. Lawrence wants to further man's understanding, man's, you know, intelligence, and just increase his awareness of the powers that can be harnessed and how to use those powers for the betterment of mankind. But Dr. Regas has another agenda, and it is certainly boo-hissable. He is like a sort of proto-Nazi in many ways. He wants to create a race of supermen. He thinks that the intelligentsia of the world are shackled by the millstone of just simple-minded peasants hanging from their necks who slow progress down. So he wants to create, or rather transform, the underclass, the lower class, the idiots of the world into mindless automatons by using electrical charges. This is his theory. If we pump enough electricity into them, they become a battery which we can use to do all our jobs, all our menial tasks, fight our wars for us. Yeah, there's a definite sort of Hitler-esque sort of race of supermen, the Aryan ideal of this. Only not like Adonises. They're going to be just machines of flesh, which they can control. And they wouldn't need to be fed, just another charge, and off they go, humping lumps of rock and granite and building bridges and towers and skyscrapers, doing all our work for us while we frees us up to, embrace the universe and think beyond. You can see his point of view, but it's, he's creating a slave class, and it's not, well, it's not kosher, is it? And so these two are at loggerheads, but Dr. Lawrence kind of likes it as well. Oh, come on now, Paul. You're thinking too much about this. Why don't we just go and have some supper? And he says at one stage, he said, there's some cheese in the kitchen, cheese and beer. Let's have some Welsh rarebit. Welsh rarebit. A lot of people in America don't seem to know what that is. It's cheese on toast. Cheese on toast, folks. Normally with Worcester sauce as well. But you can put beer on it. But I like to think of these two just relaxing in the kitchen with big plate of cheese on toast, melted cheese, lovely, and quaffing beer. You see, props. What it's all about. And right now, I fancy some cheese on toast as well. And it's a lovely sort of image that they have there, but you don't see them do that. But Dr. Paul Regis, Lionel Atwill, has a rare moment where he just goes, okay, yeah, let's go. You're right. So he's got a different agenda for Dan McCormick than what Dr. Lawrence has. At the same time as all this, Dr. Lawrence has a big conference to go to, a big convention of all like electrobiologists, and conferences and lectures. And he's like, he doesn't really want to go, but he does go. And he says, to Dr. Paul Regis, Lionel Atwill, just look after Dan. Just do the experiments that we've already agreed on. Don't do anything more than that. Don't do anything more than that. Oh, don't worry, I won't. So straight afterwards, he starts, oh, Dan, could you come in here for a moment, please? I'm going to zap you. So he straps him into this big swivel up sort of laboratory table from previously used by Frankenstein's monster, and increases the voltage going through him each day or each session. And we see him writing notes. And yes, the session's gone really well. He's a bit unsure at first, but he seems to be liking it now. And what you're noticing as well is that the dog suddenly, after being so all over Dan, is a bit wary. And the dog's a bloody good actor, At first, it's all over, Lon Chaney, because the dogs are drawn to him. It's a cinch that he was going to become a lycanthrope, a member of the pack, because dogs all seem to love him anyway. And so the dog's all over him. But then afterwards, the dog's at the door when they can hear going through in the laboratory, and it's like, oh, it doesn't like what's happening. And then when Lon Chaney, Dan comes out again, hey, Cookie, the dog's kind of like a bit unsure because he's changing. But the dog does come over, and and it's really well done. The dog is totally, I love you, I want to play with you, but you look like you smell like you, but there's something else about you. So it's unwary of him. So it's forever watching him and never coming close anymore. But it's concerned, and you see this. It is really good. He also, Dan clearly forms an attachment with June, and she's interested more in the newspaper reporter man, whose name is Mark Adams, played by Frank Albertson. And he's come along. There's always one hanging on, isn't there? Because of the story of the guy that survived. And she's initially a bit hostile towards him because she's like, it's a bit rude, this, isn't it? People have died. He said, yeah, but people aren't interested in the people that died anymore. They want to know about the man that survived. The boy that lived. Harry Potter was based on man-made monster. You see, we've sussed it out again. Oh, these connections, connectivity, electricity. It's all part of the same ball game. So she's a bit initially hostile towards this guy, but it's actually not that bad. He's not, an evil guy just out for a story, at anyone's expense. He's genuinely interested in what makes Dan McCormick tick, and he also has the hots for June, and she kind of more has the hots for him than she does for poor old Dan McCormick. But Dan just does say to her early on, in a bit of foreshadowing for something at the end of the movie, he says to her, you kind of remind me of a girl I was kind of sweet on. She was a high wire artist in a Big Mac show. Big Mac show? What's that about? I mean, I've been known as Big Mac in my time. But a Big Mac show. Some kind of circus or vaudeville or carnival travelling up and down a Big Mac sort of thing. I don't know. Are they carried on Big Mac trucks? Do they all eat Big Macs? I don't know. But he says, I was kind of sweet on this girl, which is why, he likes her. And she likes him. He has that affable, lovable, low-rent, long-headed, dullard sort of charm, old country charm. Lon Chaney's voice as well, that sort of slow-drawn, gravelly, without being raspy, husk of a voice is wonderful. And of course, it's in all the movies. And a lot of people said that, well, the reason is he smoked excessively and he drank a hell of a lot. But I love his voice, and you're going to hear me extol his virtues a lot. I'm a massive champion of Bela Lugosi, who gets a bad rap and had a massively unlucky run after being really stratospheric. He fell like a meteor, rose and crashed, and that was it. And Lon Chaney, again, he has his detractors who just say same old shtick every time. But it's not. He conveys so much, even with so little to work with. And although he's great in this, he doesn't have that many lines, really. But we're going to come on to all this. So, as I said, he's now being experimented on, or rather just being supercharged all the more voltage and for longer duration. And we see him enjoying this. He's strapped to this thing and he's enjoying it. And his face, he smiles at the professor, and because he's obviously enjoying it. He's built up an immunity with his carnival sideshow act. But even though he said it was all, a lot of it's hoax for just to please the peasants and all that, but he actually does have immunity, and he's getting stronger and stronger. And when he's supercharged up, he is stronger. And he walks out one time from the laboratory. The dog's done a runner. I'm not going near you. And as he walks past, and he feels energized but funny. And he walks past a goldfish bowl and a sparkly. So he puts his hand in the bowl and he kills the goldfish. This is a curious scene, and I've read people who've had a lot of why does he do that? Well, why does he kill the fish? A lot of people initially thought that he puts his hand in and just crushes the fish. It doesn't. He just electrifies them. And why does he do that? Well, I think it's kind of obvious. He's just like, what? Did that really? I'll do that again. And kills him. In a later scene, June says to her uncle, who's the kindly, loving Dr. Lawrence, I think there's something wrong with Dan. And you notice the goldfish in your room, in your study? He just goes, goldfish? Did I have goldfish? Yeah, there's a bowl of goldfish on the sideboard. Oh, yes. And it says, they're dead. Oh, something in the water? No. Electricity. They were electrified. How does she know that? She wasn't there when this happened. How does she know they were electrified? There's no residual current in the water, is there? But it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. Just one of those little things you pick up and you go, oh, hang on, really? How do you know that? Psychic bitch, But yet Lon suddenly is his downside from being supercharged. He's almost just monosyllabic and comatose and goes very grey and dishevelled when he's not supercharged. So the massive highs and the catastrophic lows. So you're getting this sort of this addiction thing. So when he has withdrawal symptoms, he can be brought to such a high level, but it's only temporary, it can't last. So they realise that, because he gets more and more supercharges put into him, that Dr. Paul Regis realises that, hang on, if we put a non-conductive suit on, we can retain your charges. So, but we'll come on to that. The kindly professor comes back from this big convention, and they're sitting at the dinner table. So, Paul, how are the experiments going with Dan? Oh, very well, yes. And you're adhering totally to what I said. Oh, yes, of course I am. His fingers crossed behind his back. Where is Dan anyway? And they call their Oriental manservant in. Where's Mr. McCormack? Oh, he's out in the garden, sir. Yeah. Oh, bring him in. Tell him his dinner's ready. And this guy, this manservant, who's also the chef, has prepared your special lunch, Mr. Dan. Whatever it is, looks tasty, whatever it is. But Dan comes in, and he's nowhere near the same man that Dr. Lawrence left behind. The affable, lovable goofball, cracking a joke every second and loving life. what comes in is a shambling wreck of a man. He's grey, he's withdrawn, he looks like he's been out on a 3-day bender, and he hasn't slept in all that time, and he's at death's door. Looks suicidal, and we can see that. And then I go, Dan, are you all right? He just sits down at the end of the table, doesn't say a word, and like, here you are, Mr. Dan, here's your special dinner. He just goes, I'm not hungry. And he gets up and just shambles off. And like, June's dead concerned, obviously, but Paul Regis is like, well, I know what's happening. And I said, is he all right? He seems a bit under the weather. A bit under the fucking weather? Are you joking me? It's probably overworked from all the experiments. Yes. Oh yes, you must be right. Oh, tell him he needs to have a break. You know, I'll see him later. You know, Uncle, I'm a bit worried about Dan. No, he's just overworked. You've just seen the guy. The makeup, by the way, is done by the great Jack P. Pierce, uncredited. This is not a film of makeup effects at all. Special effects, yeah, which we'll come on to, but not makeup effects. But what they do, they put loads of shadows, and as the film progresses, he gets worse. Shadows under his eyes and around his face, and she make him withdrawn. They sort of pinch his lips, put little striations like he's being desiccated. So you're getting an effect of Boris Karloff from The Mummy, yeah, and Boris Karloff as Frankenstein's monster. It does look like that to a degree, but not monstrous. It's just someone who's really terribly, down and withdrawn, drug addicted, electricity addicted, and having a withdrawal symptom. It's effective, it's subtle, but it's effective. What is not so subtle is the actual visual effect. Now, this is what happens when they start upping the charges. Right, well, the professor's back now, so I'm going to have to like this. Dan, this is our last session, and I'm really going to ramp it up this time, so be prepared for a jolt. And he really does it. And cheers, y'all. As you can tell, if I'm drinking that, there's no more whiskey in the house, so needs must. And so that little amp meter, the generator, and you've got it. Oh, because he wants Lawrence out the way, so although Lawrence is looking over all the medical notes, he goes, "Oh, here's that little drink that your niece said you must drink. Obviously, it's medicinal. You know, Uncle, you've been overworking yourself. You need a rest. You know, I'll get your tablets. You know, put them in your." It's that sort of thing. So he gives him this little drink. Clearly, he's drugged it to take him out the game. So suddenly he's like, "Oh dear, the confidence has taken it out of me." Yes, it must have done all the travel. Why don't you go to your room? I'll take care of things here. Don't worry. So off he goes to bed. And in the meantime, you've got like June and the reporter who's got the hots for it. Has bought. These cost $1.10, but for some kind of show, and they're off going to this. But she's dead concerned about, Uncle didn't seem too well. They've put him to bed there. He's too tired. And Dan doesn't seem right either. I'm very concerned about Dan. Look, come on, dollface. Let's just go to the show. You've had a nice sequence as well of the withdrawn and sullen and dour Dan. Dour Dan. And this reporter's trying to brighten him up. Look, I've got some card tricks. I'll show you a card trick. Like, I'm not going to fool you with the ace of spades, but pick one from the pack. If you watch the scene, and Dan doesn't say a word, he just grabs a card, and then he walks off, and they're going like, is he all right? Doesn't seem to like my magic. I've tried to bring him out of his shell, but he's just not interested. If you look at the card he's got, it is the ace of spades. He's actually holding the ace of spades, and he throws it in the fire, big fireplace, goes up, and then he gets called off for another super jolt, which is the final one. Then these two go off for this concert, this gig, whatever it is. Uncle's gone to bed because he's been drugged by evil Dr. Regis, and then Regis takes him in, and that's when he supercharges him. Now what happens now? He begins to glow. His face, his hands, every exposed bit of skin glows, and it's a John P. Fulton effect. John P. Fulton did all the visual effects to a lot of these Universal movies. A lot of John P. Fulton, Jack P. Pierce, there's the makeup effects, and they're good, but they're hokey. His face just glows, and although it's black and white, it seems to take on a really intense orange, glowing aspect, even in black and white. And what it does mimic, you know, the old Universal Aurora model kits, where the action figure that you built glowed in the dark. It seems to take on that effect. Now, I don't know if they ever made one of the man-made monster of Dan McCormick, which seems like a missed opportunity if they didn't, because he's tailor-made for it. There was certainly a Wolfman that did it. There was Frankenstein's monster, Bride of Frankenstein, Dracula. They all did it. Creature of Black Lagoon, he glowed as well. The Mummy, but I don't think they made one of him. I don't recall ever seeing a version of a glow-in-the-dark Aurora figure of Dan McCormick, but there should be, because what they do is they realise, well, Dr. Regus realises, once you're supercharged, the minute you touch things, it drains out of you. So, you know, I've got to try to retain all of this power inside you. So he gives him this suit. Now, this suit is fantastic. It's a great big sort of rubberized, you know, insulated suit. So it keeps all the energy in. So you'll only see, like, I think his hands and his face, his head glowing. The rest of it's all covered up. Big boots on and all that sort of stuff. So, and it looks amazing. I've got to be honest. It looks like something from a Spider-Man comic, like Electro, or, you know, any a supervillain who's highly energized would have this kind of suit. And with the glowing effects and the hands and this sort of, it almost looks like, if you can imagine the spacesuits from Forbidden Planet that the human space super warriors arrive on, the super warriors, they're a bunch of dickheads, aren't they? They're sort of grey suits with all of the weird sort of ergonomic paneling on them as well. That coupled with Gort from The Day the Air Stood Still, and you've got the suit that Dan wears, and I think it looks great. So anyway, but he's also gone under a trance. The more power that Regus has put into him, the more Regus is able to control him as well. So he's giving him suggestions. This is the whole thing about, like, if I zap you with this, I'm removing your personality and your will, but I will be able to control you, and your strength will be tenfold, but I control you and that strength. Now, with this extra joltage, and the extra current that he's putting through him, all the lights in the house are dimming, and you've got the kindly old Professor Lawrence in his bed, you know, and the bedside lamps go, he's like, what's going on? So of course he comes down, doesn't he? And he walks in on this. Paul, what are you doing? What's happened here? I told you, Lawrence, this is what we've been working towards. I've created a man now who is under my power. It's worked. We can show this to the world. Paul, you've destroyed a man to create this. It's monstrous. It's inhuman. You know, I've got to call the police. This is wrong. He goes to the phone and he's about to call the cops. Like, so of course, Lionel Atwill, at his most devious, just says, like, Dan, kill him. Stop. Oh, he says stop him. Sorry, stop him. But how are you going to stop him? So he goes over to stop him. But the minute he touches him, he dies. He doesn't just die, by the way, because you think he's been strangled, but in actual fact, his neck's been crushed, his neck's been broken, as we find out later. But Paul Regus is like, oh, you know, well, the body's lying, his friend is lying there dead. Well, that's murder now, but I didn't do this. You did it, Dan. Remember it. You killed Dr. Lawrence. Who killed Dr. Lawrence? I killed Dr. Lawrence. I killed him. And that will become the mantra for all of Lon Chaney's lines for the rest of the movie. I killed him. I killed him. And that's pretty much it. So, but he still does it really well. Anyway, so June's got this misgivings. Let's go back and make sure they're okay. Then we'll go back to this swanky do or whatever the hell they're going to. And of course they go back and they find her uncle's body lying there dead. Paul, what happened? It was him. He killed him. So poor old Dan, who was the survivor of this big crash, the down on his, the lovable, affable, you know, down at heel, sort of, you know, average Joe, the champion who survived the big crash. He's now a monster. He's a killer. He's a murderer. So he's arrested. And then you get like this weird element where they're going to analyze Dan. Like, why'd you do it? But all he can say is, I killed him, because Paul Regus has put this, you know, idea in his head. He's controlling him. But June's not, it's something about him. It's sinister. I don't like what he's been doing. So they want to try to work out what experiments he'd been doing on the sly. But before all that, she says this, I think the DA, I think there's something wrong there. You need to investigate what he was doing. What changed Dan? Dan was a lovable man. Dan, the lovable man. Now he's Dan, the murderous man. It doesn't make any sense. Even the dog doesn't like him, for God's sake, Okay, we'll go around and we'll speak to him. So they do, but Lionel Atwill is so slimy and smarmy that he gets away with it. Look, all I did was the experiments which Dr. Lawrence set out. But he's got these other notes, which was, obviously that was what he meant to be doing, not what he was doing. And he keeps them hidden away. And this is what happened. I can't explain it. Well, we're going to have a hearing and we're going to, investigate his backstory and where he came from and all this. We're going to get to the root of all this. Well, if that would be all right, I'd like to come along to that. So he's going to sit in on this hearing, and of course, because he's there, he's going to reinforce that spell upon Dan, who's now again, because he's not got the supercharging, they took the suit off him, so with all the sparks drained out of him. So he's sitting there in this court hearing room, and they're really grilling him, going at him, and you've got this kind of crazy bastard prosecutor who's saying, we've learned you used to live in an orphanage. You came from a broken home and you lived in an orphanage. You were beaten there, weren't you? You were beaten so badly, you were beaten so hard that you thought that Dr. Lawrence was the man that beat you and you wanted to kill him. And in a great moment of acting, which, Lon Chaney could do it. He could act to anyone who detracts from him. He, like Bela Lugosi, got saddled with certain roles, but he would always give his best in these. And you see the torment that he goes through as this guy's telling him all this, and it might not be true, but he's twisted, and he says, but a lot of it's through his eyes. No, but you did kill him. I killed him. Because he can't get out of this, he's locked into it. Dr. Regas has locked him into this mentality that he's a murderer. Well, he is, because he did fucking kill him. But it's just that, no, look at his face, look at his eyes. There's so much going on there. Playing a tortured, fate-twisted and betrayed man is a speciality of Lon Chaney Jr.'s. Without a doubt, it is. So, that's it. There's a hearing in 29 days' time, and that's it. You're going to the chair. The chair? In that moment as well, when this other guy said, you were beaten, and you were beaten so badly, so hard, it's twisted you, and he's coming to this, why you killed Dr. Lawrence. If you look at Lionel Atwill, in a great little throwaway moment, Atwill's going, because it's just this cod science, these idiots, psychology. No, electrobiology's where it's at. It's almost like a bit of a Big Bang Theory, sort of the rivals of different science departments. But it's just the way he goes. It's great because he's manipulating Dan at the same time. That's why he's there, to make sure Dan doesn't slip up and expose him. So anyway, and then he gets sent to the chair. Well, what do we all know is going to happen there? And in a great scene, although you wish you saw it, you've got all reporters there, and you've got the priest in the cell giving Dan, the last rites and all that, confession time, and then Dan, and Lon Chaney again, he looks so broken. Oh, it's heartbreaking. And then the guards, we're not talking Green Mile here, the guards usher him out, and they go from the cell down a corridor to the room where he's going to be put in the chair. And then we cut to the two guys, the engineers who work below, who throw all the switches, they and he'll get fried. We don't see him in the chair. We don't see him get electrified. But we have the reporters, including our guy Mark, what's his name? Mark Adams. He's there as well. And they keep running, they keep hearing stuff and then running to the phones to phone their press office. But what happens is, they get a phone call in this engineer's room. Hit him again. What? They've hit him twice. He's still alive. Hit him again. Zzz, all lights are flickering and everything, and then you hear screaming. Because obviously they've energized, Dan, and he's and of course he's now a monster, isn't he? His glowing head, glowing hands, and he busts down a door, and he's obviously killed a couple of guards. You haven't seen that, but and you don't see him in the chair. Now people have said, well, isn't that a real badly missed opportunity? It is, but there's reasons why that was. And a lot of people said, well, this is after the Hays Code came in. A lot of films, horror films before this, were quite graphic and extreme for their time. And then it brought in, the new code of practice came in, what you could and couldn't show. There were still horrific things within movies, but having said that, one thing they didn't show, other than guillotines and hanging, which were historically accurate, but also they were public executions, so people could go and watch that. So audiences at the time weren't, unaware or super shocked by seeing the guillotine come down. You might not see the head come off, but the guillotine coming down, the trap door and the legs hanging there. That was okay. But what they hadn't seen, because it's not public, is someone going to, say, a gas chamber or the electric chair. So I think that Universal either thought, well, we can't afford to show this, because it would be a big showpiece if we did, but we can't afford it. But I think really they were sort of leaned on, let's not be showing the electric chair. Let's not show that. That's going to be too shocking. Oh dear, for audiences. Cheers, y'all. That's worth it. So you don't see it, and in a way, it's effective that you don't. But you hear the build-up, you hear the excitement and the terror of guards' voices and screaming and these reporters, and then he's got the warden of the jail, and he's walking behind him like that. In other words, don't stop me, because if I touch him, the warden's dead. And he gets out, he breaks free. We find out later the warden's body's been found because he has killed the warden. And they make a supposition that, well, I think the warden tried to get away and he tried to stop him. You don't fucking know that. He could have like, fuck it, I'm having you. And fried him, But anyway, in the meantime, everyone's heard that this, Dan, electrical man, is on the loose. He's killed a couple of prison guards. He's killed the warden. He's on the loose, But he's not in his suit, so he's losing power all the time. June has gone back to, June's confronted Dr. Paul Regis, the true villain, the true boo-hissable villain of the piece. And he's, yes, I did it, blah, 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 And his notes become available. It's just like, this proves that you did it. Yes, but it worked. Anyway, you're going to find out more about it. And in it, that true despicable, he's clearly snapped. He grabs it and he throws it onto this table. He straps it down. I'm gonna energize you as well, because he knows obviously that once he's got them in his power, he energizes them. Then he can use. This is kind of not really discussed, but he clearly has some kind of ability to mesmerize, his experimental guinea pigs, his victims, because just being electrically charged doesn't make you susceptible to someone's suggestion. So he must have some kind of powers. But anyway, so that's what he's going to do to her. But in the meantime, Dan has gone across the countryside and he meets what looks like a bunch of gypsies with a horse-drawn cart full of hay and all the family sitting in the back of it. And there's a guy at the front, all this sort of thing. And these horses coming down a country lane. It does seem like a gypsy sort of, what you're going to see with the Wolfman forevermore. The gypsies and horse-drawn carts and carriages and wagons. And he's there, and he's just in front of them. And he's scaring the horses. He doesn't touch the horses, but the guy who's in charge is going, get out of the way, stay away. And they're all in the back screaming. And in a great sequence. Now, if they couldn't afford, this is what proves, if they couldn't afford to have done the electrocution sequence, the execution sequence via electrocution, but they do this, which is a great big action set piece. The guy goes to whip Dan, and of course, because he makes contact, he goes, and he dies. And the whip flies back and sets fire to all the hay in the back of this wagon. So, and then the horses bolt, two big black stallions. It bolts, everyone leaps off. This guy falls burning to the deck. And then this thing takes off and it's all ablaze. And luckily, I was thinking, Christ, those horses better not get hurt by that, because that cart really is on fire and they are two real horses. You better be careful here. But they've obviously arranged it so it breaks loose. The harness all breaks loose, and this cart, this wagon, tumbles down the side of the hill onto the next road. Big conflagration. It's a really great sequence. But he's going back. He's heading back to the house, so he will arrive in the nick of time, of course. And he smashes down the door to the laboratory. And by the way, we've also seen the dog. The dog Corky's made a reappearance, and Corky's like, obviously things aren't good here, and bolts out into the other countryside. But he's like, oh, and he's walking towards, the mad professor and all that. Like, he's like, Dan, no, and all this. And he tries to lock himself in another room, and in a bit of a letdown. And this is where Lionel Atwill's character gets his comeuppance, but Dan just holds the doorknob, right? And because he's holding it, and the doorknob's connected through the door, electrical current travels through, and on the other side, you just hear, on the other side of the door. Then you open the door, and the big villain of the piece is lying there dead. You kind of wanted to get him by the throat, and and his head just to go pure barbecue, microwave. No, you get that. It's a subtlety that you didn't really want. And I know we say the execution scene should have been filmed and it would have been really exciting. I kind of get why it wasn't there, I understand it, but you get this flaming wagon thing which kind of makes up for it, and another death as well. But this does appear to be a letdown sequence. Like, I should have really got to grips with him, totally. What I've missed out as well, how he's able to keep all his power. He meets another couple as well, an elderly couple who are they're driving up to their ranch or whatever, and he comes out of the shrubbery and scares the woman because he's glowing like that, and this guy calls the cops. But what happens is he gets into, they've been fishing a thing, and he picks out some big rubber waders and he puts them on, so he's not losing any charge through his feet, into the ground and anywhere, so he can still keep enough charge to go and kill Paul Regis. Because once he gets in there, he puts on his big super villain suit. He breaks the girl free, June, who conveniently passes out. And this is like a bit of a sort of a hallmark. What you're going to get there, he's going to hold her because he's got the suit on, he's not electrocuting her, and he's going to walk off into the woods and across the moors. There's always moors, isn't there? And the dog's out there as well. Corky's out there. Because, I love this guy, but what's he doing? Somehow I've got to save this guy. In the meantime, Mark Adams, the journalist, and the police all rock up at the professor's abode, the joint professor's abode, and there's another dead professor. Oh shit! He's been electrified. Yes, it's Dan. Dan's been here, but he must have June. So now you've got the old Universal Horror staple. You've got a mad monster with a woman in his arms going across the countryside. You've got pretty much what amounts to the villagers with the pitchforks, only it's the police with guns and all sorts, like torches, and this reporter. And he can't really hide, can he? He's glowing, for God's sake. He's glowing, his big fucking glowing head. And they pursue him, and they shout, Dan, put her down, Dan, stop, don't let me shoot you, Dan. We can save you. Don't think so. And he gets stuck on a barbed wire fence, and it's Mark that realises it. He's like, Dan, it's going to rip his suit. It'll drain all the power out of him. Because they've seen the notes, the bad doctor's notes, and now they know what's been happening. And so they know he'll lose his power, and it'll kill him. Dan, put her down. So he does put June down, but he gets stuck in this barbed wire fence, and it's ripping through the suit, and we see him in an agony, and it will rip through badly, and the power will drain. He will collapse, and do you know what? It's a great death scene as well. He looks in anguish, and the image of him wrapped up in barbed wire and writhing round, and then the power draining from him, and his face giving out, and then he'll roll down, and he'll go down the hill, and he'll lie in a little ditch. What happens next is truly, truly heartbreaking. Oh God. Corky the dog's there. Oh no, I'm going to get upset. I don't believe it. I watched this with my daughter yesterday, and I was definitely whinging. She knows it. And oh my God, I am. The dog, it gingerly walks up to the body, and Hans J. Salter's wonderful strings, the little Corky theme, the tragic theme is playing, and it's sort of like, oh, next to, the dead, Dan McCormick, Lon Chaney, and then it because the power's drained from him, it puts its paws on him like that, and it just puts his face. Oh, Jesus Christ. So you've got poignancy, you've got this haunting final image, this tragic guy who done nothing wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. He was used and abused, manipulated and driven to persuaded using mental, suggestion to kill a guy that he loved. Oh, God. And the poor dog loved him and has lost him. Oh, man. But then we go to the finale of the film is June and the reporter, and they read through the notes. Right, well, I've got to expose this, because this will prove that Dan wasn't the murderer. This will prove that he couldn't help himself, that he was the victim in all of this. No, Mark, no. If those notes fall into the wrong hands, someone else will do this, and it'll happen all over again. And that fireplace, the roaring blaze where Lon Chaney threw the ace of spades in there, and they stood by that. He goes, you know what, June? Maybe you're right. And they throw the journal in. The journal goes into flames, and weirdly enough, Corky the dog comes back, and dog doesn't die. Those horses didn't die, Corky doesn't die. Corky comes back in, and this journal's burning away there, and he gets up to the fire grate, and the dog's trying to get the journal back out. Doesn't do it, obviously, but isn't that weird? Is it signifying again that, look, that journal would have admonished Dan McCormick from all the crimes, that he was actually innocent and a victim? That's the evidence to say that he's not to blame, and the dog's trying to get, the dog knows that, but you know what I mean? The dog's interested in this, and it ends on a final poignant moment. Folks, it's barely on for an hour. I'd say 59 minutes, and already you've got all that kind of stuff in there. Great big miniature but fabulously shot bus crash at the start. Outtakes, alternate takes of that footage would make their way into other movies afterwards, because it is such an elaborate set piece. You've got the introduction of Dan, lovable, the whole Dan and Corky antics, Dan's fledgling interest in June, the duality of the two professors, this sort of altruistic, expansion of mankind's knowledge from one, and the harnessing of menial power, and we should be in charge of the underclasses and use them. This Nazi sort of regime from the other guy, and then the experimentation and the withdrawn qualities of Lon Chaney as Dan McCormick, and then the glowing, monstrous version. It is a monster movie, and there is set pieces and there is killings, and it does work, and it has this harrowing sort of narrative which does affect you. I think it's a wonderful film, and it's so massively overlooked. Now, Lon Chaney Jr, Creighton Chaney, didn't like being called Lon Chaney Jr. And indeed, he argued vociferously to have that junior bit dropped, and Universal did do that. So in a lot of later movies, he was just Lon Chaney. He actually wanted just to keep the name Creighton Chaney. He was doing everything he could to get away from the shadow of his father, the illustrious Lon Chaney Sr, the man of 1,000 faces. And whereas his dad, Lon Chaney Sr, portrayed so many classic monsters and did his own makeup as well, he was performing under tons and tons of makeup. Lon Chaney Jr, Creighton, his son, would, throughout most of his movies, would actually just be his face. So he'd be genuinely acting and emoting, even though you might see him as the Mummy, you might see him as the Wolfman, but even in the Wolfman movies, most of the time he was just Lon Chaney anyway. So he was doing everything he could to break away from that stature of his father, and get away from that sort of overpowering image and something that he's got to live up to. And I think he did. As I say, in silent movies, Lon Chaney Sr was working under a lot of makeup anyway. Lon Chaney had to speak and emote and show his face. So he did a lot more. There's a lot more range there than what his father ever exuded. So I'm with the son on this. And I understand why that he fought against the studios, and then he was typecast so often. I mean, giving such a wonderful performance as Lenny Small in Of Mice and Men really did set the way for him. And then with this, playing the hangdog, lovable sort of, buffoon, the lunk-headed, average Joe, who then becomes a monster. And then Larry Talbot, who is exactly the same sort of thing. A voyeuristic, complete and utter buffoon. You know, we did a wonderful job on that telescope up in California. You know, optical company in California. You know, where did you learn this way with, you know, physical instrumentation and all that? Like, you know, I haven't got a clue when it comes to the real stuff, mathematics and all that astronomy stuff. You know, this is all the Wolfman. And you do wonder, hang on a minute, you really are just a fucking idiot, aren't you? But he does it so well, and that would become his trademark in so many other movies. Like Bela Lugosi, he got trapped in this sort of this shroud, which would make him forever synonymous with this sort of role. But that doesn't mean he couldn't act. Like with Bela Lugosi, I'll always champion Lon Chaney Jr. Creighton, who I think is fantastic. And this is a wonderful film. Now, he has a different look in this. Normally, in most of the movies, his hair slicked back, you know, as the Wolfman. When he went, you know, he's like, you know, he's confused and the hair will flick forward across the face like that. Now, in this movie, when he is fully energized and he's got the glowing face, he is transformed because he has a fair bit of hair hangs down over his face. It changes his look quite a bit. And with all the shadow underneath the eyes and making him look sallow and, you know, well, withdrawn, he does look different. Now, I've always said that in the remake of Joe Johnston's remake of The Wolfman from 2010, which I've covered a fair bit, and I love the film, badly flawed, but I love the movie. Benicio del Toro does look like Lon Chaney Jr. in that movie. He does. He was meant to be doing Creature of Black Lagoon, that's what he wanted to do, and then the Wolfman came up instead. Oh, but I love The Wolfman, it's one of my favourites. This is Del Toro speaking. And he does look like Lon Chaney Jr. No one ever seems to say this, but there's loads of shots in the Wolfman remake where he's a dead ringer, and it's like they've almost composed the shots, him looking, when he realised, shit, I've been out on the prowl, oh my god, and he's like, this realisation and the horror on his face, it's exactly the same as in the Wolfman, and the Wolfman's now playing, by the way. Hans J. Salter and Frank Skinner did the music for this, and they did the music for the Man-Made Monster. So, folks, it is a fantastic film. I'm just looking at my notes now. What's his face? George Waggner didn't just do horror. He did westerns like The Fighting Kentuckian. He did war movies like Operation Pacific. He was a great atmospheric build director. He would build his narrative. He would build successive scenes. He would have characters. He'd have great dialogue. And he would build a mise-en-scene. And the mood would only intensify and build up to a climax. He was excellent at that. And of course, this film, albeit an hour long, he packs so much into it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful exercise in great universal horror. Now, as I say, the 40s run of universal horrors, the monster mashes, I love them all. And there's so many other great films from this period. But it did mark a downturn in their style and their sort of credibility. They weren't getting the critical responses that they got for their groundbreaking alien movies from the 30s. You'd understand that because things had changed. The new censorship had come in, so they couldn't get away with a certain amount of things. They'd imply a lot more. But there's still great ingenuity there. But of course, once you start bringing monster mashes in and everyone's meeting everybody else with Abbott and Costello, then you are watering down the product which made your name. So this does kind of mark the end of the actual proper horror run for Universal, where they had any real, well, this and The Wolfman certainly marked the end. So 1941 is kind of the end of that tenure of really great stuff, really groundbreaking stuff. This film would be re-released in the 1950s, 1953 I think, under a different title and under a different company. It wasn't Universal that re-released it. It would be called The Atomic Monster. Why? Because in the 50s everything was atomic, wasn't it? It was all like radiation and mutations and giant bugs and creature features and all that kind of stuff. So after bombing Hiroshima and the atomic bomb and all this, splitting the atom, they retitled it The Atomic Monster. That doesn't make any sense at all. He's quite clearly this electrically charged thing. It's not like to do with the atoms and all that kind of thing. And new scientists out there go, oh, well, actually, yeah, atoms are involved in all, the connectivity and the, the sort of reflexes of electrical atoms. See, I don't know what's what I'm about. But it just seems, it's a title which is not really what the monster is. He's just electrified. But then again, you can't really call it the electrical man either. It just sounds like, he's come round to read your meter. It's not very exciting, is it? Dan, the electrical man, Cheers, folks. I do think that I would like to have seen maybe a sequence of him as, you know, the carnival sort of, you know, electro sort of guy, and all the kids sort of watching him doing his trickery and all that, to give you a bit more basis as to what he did and just reinforce that. I mean, it's kind of sledgehammered home that he's got this immunity to electrical power anyway. And the fact he survived a crash which killed everybody else and he walked away scot-free, you know, well, that kind of gives it away. But, you know, I'd like to have seen that. I'd love to have seen the execution sequence going horribly wrong for everybody around, because he ends up executing all of them. And you could have seen the grin on his face as well as they hit him again. And he's like, ah. That would have been really good. But it would perhaps, maybe, it is another way of looking at it, if you'd seen him getting energized and getting stronger, because he does enjoy the process. You see him in the earlier sequences of Dr. Regas supercharging him, that he's smiling, he's grinning, he's enjoying it like a drug. He's getting high on it. And so if you'd seen that during that, you might have lost sympathy for him. You might have, oh no, he's becoming a monster. You'd see him smiling, and that would change your feelings towards him. Possibly, I don't know. But I'd have loved that sequence to be in there. But you get the stampeding horses and the flaming wagon, which I really, really enjoy. So, and he looks great in that costume. He looks wonderful. You'd think that'd be hokey as hell. Now, again, here's another thing as well, which I've discussed a fair bit. The Wolfman, everyone always talks about what colour is his shirt, what colour is his pants, and I've discussed it a lot. And it's confused by the fact that lobby cards came out and advertising material came out where artists would liberally colour in these things and they make them lurid. That's not how they looked when they made the movie. So they very often maroon, a big, lush, deep red maroon colour would often be the colour of the shirt for the Wolfman. Now, for the lobby cards for this, that suit is done in a big, lush, red maroon colour. And like, no way on earth would it be that colour. Why would it be that colour? It's going to be, and it clearly looks like sort of silvery grey of Gort from, what's it called? The Day the Earth Stood Still. And other, science fiction-y sort of robot colours. Grey and silver, that's what it looks like. And that's clearly got to be it. So people go, oh, maybe it was that colour. No, it wasn't. And they always talk about the colour of Frankenstein's monster in various versions. When sometimes he was green, obviously painted green, to look more grey on black and white film. And also, what colour was the fairy waistcoat he wears in Son of Frankenstein? This kind of stuff. Like, what colour is the suit he wears in Bride of Frankenstein? They always ask these things, and it always seems dead obvious to me. How it looks on screen, that's pretty much how it is, I would say. So maroon is out for this, I would say. What else was going to cover with this? I'm sure there was something else. Yeah. Now, weirdly enough, I forget the name of the comic, but it's one of the ones that caused controversy and brought in the comics code as well. Astonishing Tales and Tales to Blow Your Mind and all this kind of stuff. And all the horror comics that came out. There was a comic which had it copied still by still, frame by frame, and panel by panel in the comic book, the end of this movie, where a guy is electrically charged and he's pursued by police. He gets shot at and he stumbles into a barbed wire fence and it rips all through him and he gets shot and killed. And it ends exactly the same way as this, massively ripped off. In that same comic, the very next story was called Horror Island. Horror Island was the film that this film was on a double bill with. Massively ripped off there. You're caught. I've forgotten the name of the writer and I forgot the name of the comic book it was in, but either way, it was out there, it was done. And I've seen the panels and it's exactly the same as the end of this movie. He's there in the barbed wire fence and it's a great shot. Oh, by the way, some of you may remember I covered the new Lon Chaney Wolfman figure and from NECA, and I preferred him as Lon Chaney, as the Lawrence Talbot face. So what I've done, folks, and I hope this doesn't go wrong, I've kept him, as I always said I would do, as the human form, but I've done him with like a Tesla coil. So he's Dan, the electrical man, with this zapping Tesla coil, hand to hand. I can't quite make his face glow. I was trying to think of a way of doing that. I can't do it. Again, there'll be scientists out there going, oh, what you need is this. put a bell jar over it, and you atomize some, I don't know, fire on particles, and bingo, it glows. I don't know. But there he is. It's a wonderful film, folks. Very small movie, but big ideas and big performances. Lionel Atwill at his absolutely most devious best. Lon Chaney Jr, fantastic in it. Great effects from John P. Fulton. Great miniature effects. And great score as well. And you'll hear the bits which would creep into the Wolfman and become little themes throughout other Universal movies. Corky the dog is outstanding. The little bit with the playing card, the ace of spades. Like, I don't want to fool you with the ace of spades, and he walks up and he actually has got the ace of spades in his hand. That's a delicious little moment, which probably people don't even spot it. The transfer on this new Blu-ray from Eureka KKK is great. Bit of print damage on it. You'd expect that, but clarity is wonderful. Detail is fabulous. There is a commentary track on it by two of my favourite commentators of all time, authors and critics themselves, Kim Newman and Stephen Jones. However, folks, I gave up on their commentary 10 minutes in, and I can't even say why. I was bored. Well, I can't. I was bored by it, and I've never said that before about this double act together. They normally are. They're sparky, they're witty, and you get all the information, and it's just loads of background stuff. They give a lot of background stuff about Lionel Atwill. But what they're not doing is talking about the film which is playing out in front of them. So I'll go back to it and I'll probably go, oh, it's actually brilliant. Oh, Jesus. And it might clear up a few of the things I've been talking about, like why the electrocution scene wasn't there, why the hyphen is not there in Man-Made Monster. In fact, they do talk about that, but again, they don't even know the answer either. But I will return to that. But this Blu-ray box set from Eureka is phenomenal. The three films are all great, they're all unique, they're all clever, and I get a massive kick out of all three. The Monolith Monsters is so weird and absurd and so funny. It's so stupid, but I love it. Monster on the Campus is so funny and weird and absurd, and I love it. This is not funny. It is weird. It's clever. It's more old school. It's more old school Frankenstein sort of ethos, but looking ahead to sort of the class structure, the big class divide, and this whole Hitlerist Nazi regime propaganda element is in there as well. And yet it reverts back to being just a monster on the loose carrying the gale across the moors and pursued by the villagers. But you got Corky the dog. Oh, gee, that end. Oh my God. It's my heart just went snapped cleanly in two. It'll never repair itself either. That's it. All I've got now is drink. So there you go, folks. Man-Made Monster. Well worth your time. An hour. Jesus, an hour. And yeah, it packs so much in there. So much of a jolt. It's a shocker. And it's awesome. You'll get a kick out of it. Folks, I have been always shall be Kilt-Man. I shall always be smitten with vintage horror movies. And many modern horror movies too. And just movies in general. You know me. You know what you're going to get. A lot more than you bargained for. So folks, there you go. I'm going to see you all later. Yeah. I need some whiskey. This stuff's shit, it really is. But it's great with cheese on toast. Ooh, bit of Welsh rarebit, Professor.